How many times have you given what you thought was a winning presentation, and yet you found out that your audience didn't buy in as you expected to what you were saying? Or how about that company presentation that you didn't make the cut for the contract? Well, things like this happen because we try to present in a one-size-fits-all format. We must realize that when we prepare a speech, it doesn't mean that that same speech and the content there will apply to most groups. Therefore, you must prepare your presentation to fit your current listeners. I'm trying to click onto my next, there we go. Oftentimes, the hardest part of preparing your presentation is getting started, right? The first step is to start by determining your purpose. What is it that you want to share with your audience? How do you want them to feel? What type of actions are you expecting from them? Well, whatever your purpose, keep your presentation simple and focused. Consider that people speak for one of several reasons. We either speak to inform or teach something. We either speak to persuade or sell a point of view. How about inspiring or motivating, entertaining or amusing? We even speak to stimulate, discussion, or just debate something. Although most presentations are built on the thought of persuading others' thoughts, the presenter must allow the audience to think and to take action on their own, or just allow them to simply say no. So we must forget about the notion that our facts speak for themselves in our presentation. Granted, though, you should consider that the audience have some type of knowledge of your presentation. But the facts should be supported by clarification, interpretation as well, giving your audience a reason to change their mind and to buy in to what you're saying. How you use the facts will determine how your audience will perceive your presentation. I hope everyone is still with me here now. Now, to achieve purpose, you have to make sure that your presentation, remember now, is not a one-size-fits-all. Let me give you an example of that. If you were going out to give a sales presentation to an audience, and that audience was not the direct buyers, then you should alter that information to persuade the audience members to lead you to the direct buyers. When you're writing your purpose statement, you have to remember, once again, to keep it simple. Whenever I'm repeating things within this presentation, I'm just stressing them to make sure that you keep those things in mind. But you don't want to keep your presentation too generic, okay? You have to be prepared to answer certain questions within that preparation period. Why am I giving this presentation? What will it determine if I succeed? Determining your purpose is realistic, achievable, and yes, it's measurable. And analyzing your audience. Now, there are specific things in your purpose planning that takes time in defining your audience. To create audience buy-in, the presenter not only has to give them a reason to listen, but that reason must include the WIFM. Some of you may have heard about the WIFM, some not. That's the what's in it for me syndrome, okay? And in order to answer the reason for listening and the WIFM, you must have some idea of who your audience is. You must also know the three knows. The KNOWS knows. Okay? You have to know who you're stuffing, know when they've been stuffed, and know your stuff. So let's say that again. You got to know your stuff, know whom you're stuffing, and know when they've been stuffed. Stuffed with your information, that is. Now, based on your audience, you should know the content you are to present, of course. The size of your group will affect your content, the logistics, and the style that you present in. The size of the group will also dictate your flexibility level. Here's a rule of thumb for flexibility. If you're speaking to a group less than 30 people, that could even mean if you're speaking to one other person. Of course, you're going to have the most flexibility and more one-on-one contact. If your group is between 30 to 50 people, your flexibility lessens and you're going to have less one-on-one contact. And of course, if you have a crowd that's 50 or 50 plus people, that's even lesser flexibility and lesser one-on-one contact. Just remember that the larger the audience, the more speaker-centered your presentation will be, and the lesser the involvement you'll have with your audience. Connecting with your audience is critical to giving a dynamic presentation. Recognizing their knowledge level of the topic will help you in determining your approach. If anybody has any questions right now, by all means type them in and we can address them. Because as I said, we have much information to share here today. And I want to make sure that no one forgets their questions. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. When you're scheduling a power presentation, opt for Tuesday. As you can see on the schedule here, the grid, you can see that Tuesday has the highest mark, highest percentage. And that means that Tuesday is the best day of the week to give a presentation. As you see, Monday and Friday has the lowest value of the week for presentations. And as you go down from Tuesday during the week, when you go from Wednesday and Thursday, you can see that the value of those days decrease along the week line when you're looking to give a presentation. Audiences, they usually dislike Monday mornings and Friday afternoons. Well, because Monday, everybody's preparing to get back into the work week. And they're just focused on what they have to accomplish. And on Friday afternoons, well, people are ready to get into their weekends. And they're not ready to sit there and absorb information. The optimal time to give a presentation is at 10 a.m. The concentration levels are much higher at that time. And as time progresses during the day, that concentration level begins to weaken. 11:30, people are ready to get into the lunch hour, and if they have a luncheon meeting, they're preparing for that, or usually thinking it mentally to prepare for that. 1 to 1:30, usually a lot of people are back from lunch, and of course, the blood has rushed to the stomach, so they're not too focused on absorbing a lot of information. 4 to 4:30, well, people are ready prepared to go home at that time. It's also interesting to note that the attention and interest levels are higher at the beginning of a presentation. Say about the first 5 to 8 minutes, and that's according to author David Peoples. And he goes on to say that the reason this is that your audience tend to be drawn into you more so, just to find out what you're preparing for them, what type of information you're going to share with them at that time. So try to make a power opening during the first 5 to 8 minutes of your presentation. And if you blow it during that time, you can quickly lose credibility for the rest of the presentation. During this high level of interest time, the audience is also not only listening to you, but checking you out. They're determining if you're worth listening to, or if they want to sit next to the door and try to find a way to sneak out. Even if you accomplish delivering a dynamic opening for the first 5 to 8 minutes, remember that, the attention level generally lessens as the presentation progresses. You want to know why? Well, the creation of the human mind, that's why. Our minds can comprehend at a rate of 3 to 1, in relevance to our speaking voice, that is. Most people comprehend at a rate of 600 words per minute, while we speak at a rate of 150 to 200 words per minute. Now this, you can see there's a wide gap there then. This leaves idle time for the mind to drift to exotic places, most likely. So, as a presenter, it's your job to bring them back to reality, back into your presentation. To be successful at this, you have to sometimes add what we call spice, to heat things up. And you should do that roughly every 6 to 8 minutes throughout the presentation. The spice is an attention-getting device that becomes a part of the presentation. We'll discuss that in more detail when we do training sessions, actually. But for now, we don't get into the spice part of it as much right now. But spice can be some type of antidote that you may want to share with your audience, something that happened to you, or you want to add some humor along the way. But keep in mind that if you're adding humor, make sure that it doesn't offend anyone. And that whatever you're adding as spice, that it's it can be a little bit generic there. Although it's vital that you analyze the audience so that you can extend allowability to them, it's also necessary for you to analyze yourself, okay? And by doing this, you do a self-inventory. You should know your attitude about communicating, okay? Communicating with others. Building communication skills are improved through evaluations and feedbacks, of course. And not just from others, but basically from within you. Before we go on to the next slide, I want to know if anybody have any questions. Any questions out there? Feel free to type them in as we're presenting. Because I said we have lots of information that we're going to cover, and I want to make sure that everyone has their questions answered. Okay, we're going to progress to the next slide. What is your style? It's important, first of all, to be yourself as you build up your own presentation style. Take a moment and think about that speaker that you really liked. You really like their style. And you use our presentation, and there is time for more questions. So if you're interested in asking questions, by all means, you can ask them now. How many of you, well, I didn't do a poll on that, but I'm quite sure all of you who tuned in present to one or more people on a regular basis, and you wanted to get some more information on that. Are there any questions out there that we haven't answered? Well, we've only answered a few, but we haven't addressed actually in the presentation that you may be interested in. And keep in mind that we do provide these training seminars, and they are a day and a half. We do conduct them here or at other locations, at your location, if you feel more comfortable with that.